I came back from a hot spot in the east. The first thing I wanted was to see my fiancée. When I knocked on her apartment door with flowers, a guy in his underwear opened it and yelled, "Baby, there's a soldier here asking for you." When she stepped into the hall and saw me, I landed just after midnight, exhausted in a way that sleep does not fix. The flight home had been quiet, the kind of quiet that gives you too much time to think. My return was not planned. A rotation adjustment after a base incident moved my flight up by weeks. I did not tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not even Lauren. All I wanted was to see her face first. That was the only clear thought I had. I stopped at a 24-hour grocery store on the drive from the airport. The place smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I bought flowers without thinking too much about them. Something simple, something that said I was home and still real. The cashier thanked me for my service when she saw my ID. I nodded, already halfway gone. Lauren's apartment complex looked the same. Same security gate that never quite closed right. Same flickering light near the stairwell. I parked crooked, grabbed the flowers, and took the stairs 2 at a time. My heart was pounding, not from the climb, but from the anticipation. I imagined her opening the door half asleep, confused, then smiling when she realized it was me. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. A man stood there wearing nothing but boxer briefs and a t-shirt pushed up in his hand like he had just wiped his face. He was barefoot, relaxed, not surprised to see someone at the door. He looked me over slowly, eyes drifting to my haircut, my jacket, the flowers. He frowned, then turned his head back into the apartment and yelled, loud and casual, like he owned the place. "Baby, there's a soldier here asking for you." The hallway went silent. For a second, I thought my brain had glitched, like the sound came late or wrong. I stepped forward before I even decided to. "Who are you?" I asked. He looked back at me, smirked, and leaned against the doorframe. "I live here." That was when Lauren appeared behind him. She stopped short when she saw me. Not a gasp, not a step forward. She just froze, like someone had unplugged her. Her face went pale in a slow, controlled way that told me everything before she said a word. My name came out of her mouth late, like she had to search for it. Neighbors began opening their doors. Someone upstairs leaned over the railing. The moment had witnesses now. There was no one doing it. "How long?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Has he been living here?" She opened her mouth. He answered first. "Since spring," he said easily. "Spring. I was still overseas in spring. I had sent her money in spring. I had video called her from a concrete room with a broken fan in spring." Lauren reached for my arm. I stepped away. "This isn't what it looks like," she said too quickly. I looked past her into the apartment. The lights were on. Shoes by the door that were not mine. A jacket on the chair that I had never owned. I could smell beer and someone else's shampoo. I walked inside. She tried to block me, but she was too slow. Inside, my chest tightened. The walls were bare where our photos used to be. A cardboard box sat near the couch with my name written on it in marker. My spare boots were gone. My books were gone. On the kitchen counter were 2 mugs, both with fresh coffee residue. This was not chaos. This was organization. The man followed me in like he had every right to. "Look," he said, shrugging. "She told me you guys were basically over." Lauren started talking over him. Explanations tumbling out without shape. Stress. Distance. Not knowing if I would come back the same. Not knowing if I would come back at all. That sentence landed harder than anything else. I turned to her. "You told him that?" She did not answer. He laughed, short and sharp. "She said you were different when you left. That you were already gone." That was when something in me went cold instead of hot. I realized this was not a mistake night. This was not loneliness. This was a replacement already installed. I picked up the box with my name on it and looked inside. Clothes folded neatly. A few things missing. The engagement ring box was not there. "Where is it?" I asked. Lauren swallowed. "I moved it." "To where?" She hesitated. The man sighed like he was bored. "She sold it." The hallway noise drifted in. Someone whispered. Someone else laughed awkwardly. I set the box down carefully. I placed the flowers on the kitchen counter. They looked ridiculous there. "You told people I extended," I said. It was not a question. Her eyes snapped to mine. I didn't know how to explain it. "So you lied. I didn't think you would find out like this." I nodded slowly. "That part, at least, is true." I walked out without another word. She followed me into the stairwell, grabbing my sleeve. Her hands were shaking now. The man stayed inside. I could hear him opening a beer. "Please," she said, "don't do this here." "Here is exactly where this belongs," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She started crying then, real tears this time, but it was too late for them to matter. I stepped around her and went down the stairs. She followed me all the way to the parking lot, saying my name over and over like repetition could rewind time. I did not get in my car right away. I stood there breathing, staring at the building like it was a stranger. That was when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not recognize. You weren't supposed to see it like that. She said you were still overseas. I stared at the screen. Another message followed. We can talk man to man if you want. No hard feelings. I blocked the number. I drove away and did not stop until I reached the apartment of my old platoon buddy, Eric Dawson, who had gotten out and joined the local police department. He opened the door in gym shorts, took one look at my face, and let me in without asking questions. By the time the sun came up, I already knew this was bigger than betrayal. This was a story everyone else already knew, and I was the last one to hear it. Eric did not ask questions at first. He handed me a bottle of water, pointed me toward the couch, and turned the TV volume down without looking at the screen. That silence lasted maybe 2 minutes. It felt longer. You want to tell me, he said finally, or you want me to guess? I told him everything in order, because disorder felt dangerous. The flight, the flowers, the door opening, the way the guy said he lived there like it was nothing, the boxed-up apartment, the ring being sold. Eric's jaw tightened more with every sentence. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. That explains a lot. Those words landed wrong. What explains what? I asked. Eric hesitated. He stood, walked to the kitchen, and came back with his phone. He scrolled for a second, then turned the screen toward me. It was a photo from months ago. Lauren was in it, smiling, her arm looped through the same guy who had opened the door. They were standing outside a bar downtown. The timestamp put it square in the middle of my deployment. That was on her public page, Eric said. She didn't even hide it. I stared at the screen, waiting for anger to arrive. What came instead was clarity. You saw this, I said. Yeah. And no one told me. Eric did not dodge it. She told people you were overseas by choice. Said you wanted distance. Said you weren't sure about the wedding anymore. That word landed heavy. Wedding. I sat up. She canceled it. Eric nodded. Venue. Catering. Photographer. I heard about it through my wife. Lauren told people it was mutual. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time I did not block it immediately. I opened it. A photo loaded. It was the engagement ring. My engagement ring. Sitting on a glass counter under bright lights. Sold it last month. Helped us get ahead. There was no apology. No hesitation. Just logistics. I put the phone down and stood. The room felt too small. I need names, I said. Eric understood immediately. You sure? Yes. He made calls. Not official ones. Personal ones. Friends. Co-workers. People who talked too much when they thought they were helping. I listened from the hallway as pieces came together fast. Lauren had been bringing the guy around openly. To dinners. To work events. To her parents' house. She told everyone the same story. That I was still deployed but emotionally checked out. That she was waiting to see if I would come back different. That she deserved stability. Stability. That word showed up again and again. An hour later, Eric hung up and looked at me with something close to anger on my behalf. Her parents knew, he said. They didn't like it, but they knew. That one hurt more than the rest. I left his apartment just after noon. I needed air. I needed to see something that had not already decided who I was without me present. I drove past the apartment complex again. I did not park. I kept moving. I noticed things I had not before. A new car in her spot. His car. A sticker on the back window for a company I did not recognize. That name stuck with me. I pulled into a gas station and looked it up on my phone. The company billed itself as a logistics consultancy. Civilian contracting. International supply coordination. Nothing illegal on the surface. Nothing comforting either. My phone rang. This time it was Lauren. I answered. She started talking immediately, fast and panicked. She said it was complicated. She said I was supposed to call first. She said the timing ruined everything. That's interesting, I said calmly. Because from where I'm standing, the timing exposed it. She told me to meet her. I said yes. I told her where. Eric insisted on coming. Not as a cop. As a witness. I did not argue. We met at a cafe near the courthouse, public enough to keep her careful. She arrived alone, eyes red, hands clenched around her phone like it was a shield. She tried to sit close. I moved my chair back. She started explaining again, but this time her story shifted. Now it was loneliness. Now it was fear. Now it was not knowing if I would survive deployment. Every version centered her as the one reacting, never choosing. I asked her one question. When did you tell people I didn't want to come back? She hesitated too long. Early summer, she said finally. So before you started living with him. She nodded. That means you needed me gone before he showed up. Her eyes flicked to Eric. She did not deny it. I slid my phone across the table. I showed her the photo of the ring. I showed her the message. She said she needed money. She said she thought I would understand. Eric leaned forward. You transferred the wedding deposit to yourself. She froze. You forged his authorization, Eric continued. That's not misunderstanding. That's fraud. Her face changed then. Fear replaced control. That was when her phone rang. She looked at it and stood abruptly. I have to take this. She walked outside. Eric and I watched through the window. Her posture shifted during the call. Her shoulders tensed. Her voice dropped. She nodded repeatedly, even though the other person could not see her. She came back in pale. He's upset, she said. He thinks this could cause problems. I looked at her. Problems for who? She did not answer. Eric and I exchanged a look. That was the moment the story stopped being about cheating. That was when I realized I had not just walked in on a replacement. I had walked into the middle of something already in motion. And whatever it was, it had been moving long before I came home. Lauren did not sit back down. She hovered near the table, eyes darting between me and the street outside like she was waiting for something to interrupt the moment. Eric noticed it too. He leaned back, arms crossed, watching her with the calm patience of someone used to people unraveling. You said problems, Eric said. Be specific. Lauren shook her head. You don't understand how sensitive this is. I stood. You don't understand that this is already public. You made it public. She flinched at that. People at nearby tables were pretending not to listen, doing a terrible job of it. She lowered her voice, finally. Chris works with contracts tied to overseas supply chains, she said. He told me it was normal, that civilians help coordinate things all the time. Did he ever ask about my unit? I asked. She hesitated again. The pause was enough. He was curious, she said. He asked where you were based, how long rotations were, stuff like that. My stomach tightened. I thought about casual calls, throwaway comments, the way she had once asked me to describe a convoy route like it was just conversation. Eric stood up. This conversation is over, he said. You need a lawyer. Lauren reached for him. Please. He said if this blows up, it could ruin everything. Everything for who? I asked again. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message lit the screen. I saw the name before she could flip it over. Chris. Eric saw it too. Answer it, Eric said. She shook her head frantically. I can't. Then I will, Eric replied, picking up the phone and sliding it toward me. I did not answer. I did not need to. The fact that he was calling now told me enough. Lauren finally broke. Not crying. Talking. Fast. Messy. She said Chris had been tense lately. That he worried about audits. That he said military guys never understood how things worked on the civilian side. That he joked about how soldiers were predictable, always following schedules. That word again. Schedules. Eric's expression changed. He was not angry anymore. He was alert. Chris Nolan, he said slowly. Logistics consultant. You sure that's his last name? Lauren nodded. Eric pulled out his phone and stepped away, making a call he should not have needed to make. When he came back, his face was tight. That name popped up in a task force briefing last month, he said. Not officially charged. Flagged. Connected to shell companies that move supplies fast and ask questions later. Lauren's knees buckled. She grabbed the back of the chair to steady herself. I didn't know, she said. I swear. I believe you didn't know the whole picture, Eric said. That doesn't mean you're not in it. I left the cafe with Eric while Lauren stayed behind, staring at her phone like it might explode. Outside, the heat pressed down, heavy and relentless. You need to report this, Eric said. I will, I said. But I need to know what I'm walking into. Eric nodded. So do I. We drove to the station. Not officially. Not yet. He introduced me to Mark Holloway, a federal liaison he trusted, someone who knew how to listen without jumping ahead. I told the story again, this time with different weight behind the words. Mark did not interrupt. He wrote names down. Dates. Small details I would have ignored before. When did she start asking about your schedule? He asked. I thought back. Early summer. That lines up, he said quietly. They did not treat me like a suspect. That was clear early. They treated me like a hole in someone else's plan. By the time I left, my phone had blown up. Missed calls from Lauren. Messages that shifted tone every few minutes. Confusion. Anger. Fear. Bargaining. Then one message stood out. He's gone. I called her. She answered immediately, voice shaking. He packed everything. The apartment is empty. He took his laptop, his phone, everything. That happened fast. Too fast. Eric met me back at his place. He had already made more calls. Chris's lease was month to month, he said. Company address is a shared office. No personal ties in town. I sat down heavily. So he was always temporary. Yeah, Eric said. You weren't the complication. You were the clock. We went back to Lauren's apartment together. The place felt hollow now. Furniture gone. Drawers empty. The dog was missing. Even the trash had been taken out. Lauren sat on the floor in the bedroom, surrounded by silence. I didn't know he would run, she said. That's the part you should be thinking hardest about, Eric replied. Investigators arrived later that evening. Polite. Methodical. They cataloged devices, documents, even handwritten notes Lauren had kept without thinking they mattered. I watched from the doorway as my life became evidence. One of them pulled me aside. Your return changed the timing, he said. If you'd been a week later, this would have looked very different. Different how? He did not answer directly. Worse. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on Eric's couch, watching updates come in slowly, like distant thunder. At 3 in the morning, Mark called. They picked him up near the border, he said. Fake ID. Rental car. Wrong direction. I closed my eyes. Lauren, I said quietly. She's not charged, Mark continued. Not yet, but she's done professionally. That part's unavoidable. I looked at the dark window, my reflection faint in the glass. Everything had unraveled in less than 48 hours. The door opening had been loud. What followed was quieter, and far more dangerous. The morning after Chris was detained, the world did not snap back into place. It slowed down instead, like everything had been dipped in thick oil. I woke up on Eric's couch to the sound of his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. He was already up, already dressed, already living a different version of this story than I was. They're moving fast, he said when he saw I was awake. Faster than they expected to. I sat up and rubbed my face. My body still thought it was overseas. My head felt like it had been forced into a different life without asking permission. We drove downtown again, this time for meetings that were scheduled, not improvised. The building was federal, clean, quiet, and deliberately boring. No one raised their voice. No one accused me of anything. That almost made it worse. Mark Holloway met us in a windowless room with bad coffee and too many chairs. He laid out what had happened overnight in a tone that suggested this was only one small piece of something larger. Chris Nolan had not been improvising. His companies were real on paper and hollow everywhere else. He moved money and equipment through layers designed to look legitimate until someone asked the wrong question at the wrong time. My return had been that question. He assumed you were predictable, Mark said. Your schedule, your absence, your silence. Lauren's name came up repeatedly, not as a mastermind, not even as a partner, as an access point. Someone who talked too much because she thought she was helping. Someone who did not realize that repeating harmless details over time creates patterns. I signed statements. I confirmed timelines. I answered questions about conversations that had seemed forgettable at the time. I left that building with a folder under my arm and the strange understanding that my humiliation in a hallway had rerouted something much larger than my life. Lauren called while I was walking to the car. I did not answer. She texted instead. Long messages. Short messages. Apologies layered on top of explanations that no longer mattered. She said she never meant to put me in danger. She said she had loved me once. She said she did not know how things went so wrong so fast. Eric watched me read them without comment. What happens to her? I asked eventually. He chose his words carefully. She's cooperating. That keeps her out of cuffs. It doesn't keep her out of consequences. Those came quickly. Her employer suspended her first, then let her go quietly once investigators requested records. Her professional network went cold. Invitations disappeared. Friends who had accepted her version of events suddenly stopped returning calls when the truth reached them without her filter. Her parents called me once. Not to apologize. To ask what she should do next. I told them I was not the person to ask. I went back to the apartment alone 2 days later to collect the rest of my things. The place felt smaller than I remembered. Empty in a way that was not peaceful. Lauren was not there. She had moved out temporarily, staying with a friend who still believed her version. I found old notes in a drawer. Half-written plans for a future that assumed I would always be elsewhere. I left them behind. By the end of the week, Chris's arrest was no longer quiet. Names surfaced. Companies folded overnight. Contracts were frozen. People who had never heard of me were suddenly very interested in the exact moment I knocked on that door. I was called in again, this time by my command. I expected suspicion. What I got was something closer to approval. You did the right thing, my CO said. You reported immediately. You didn't escalate emotionally. You didn't try to handle it alone. He paused. That's not common. I was cleared formally. The word felt heavy and strange, like it belonged to someone else. I was told, off the record, that my early return had likely prevented compromised shipments from reaching active units. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else. Lauren tried one last time. She showed up at Eric's place unannounced while I was packing my car. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. Stripped of certainty. I never planned for this, she said. I know, I replied. You planned for something else. She asked if there was any way forward. I told her no. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just honestly. That seemed to hurt more than yelling would have. I left town a few days later. Not running. Not hiding. Just moving forward without dragging the wreckage with me. The flowers I bought that first night were long gone. Thrown out by someone else. That felt appropriate. The story people told about me was never fully accurate. Some said I caught her cheating. Some said I exposed a criminal network. Both were true in fragments and wrong in isolation. What mattered was simpler. I came home early. I knocked on a door. and everything that was supposed to stay hidden ran out of time.